WPLN.org.
This is 90.3 WPLN.
Nashville Public Radio.
And 91.7 WHRS Cookeville.
Nashville's home for Morning Edition and NPR News.
WPLN.org is where you can find more from WPLN News, including the Nash Villager, your human-powered newsletter and podcast, exploring Nashville news and history. Subscribe to both at WPLN.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Opryland has been closed for nearly 30 years, and as the producer of a new documentary puts it, some people are still butthurt about it. Maybe we didn't know what we had until it left a theme park-sized hole in Nashville's heart. The documentary, premiering at the Nashville Film Festival, called A Circle Broken, gives us a good excuse to reopen that wound and hear the story of Opryland like we've never heard it before. We're talking to the characters keeping that memory alive after the news. This is Nashville.
Sharing news and stories from the voices of Middle Tennessee. That's This is Nashville. Our show is made possible by Music City Prep Clinic. This is Nashville is in service to you. So if you have an idea for the show or feedback you'd like us to hear, leave us a voice message at 615-751-2500.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Justice Department says it has contacted attorneys for Ghislaine Maxwell. They want to find out if the longtime associate of the late sexual offender Jeffrey Epstein will speak with prosecutors. Maxwell is currently serving a 20-year federal prison sentence for sex trafficking. NPR's Ryan Lucas has the latest.
Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche says in a statement posted on social media that he has contacted Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyers to determine whether she would be willing to meet with department attorneys. And Blanche says he anticipates meeting with her in the coming days. The statement comes as the Trump administration scrambles to contain the fallout from the Justice Department's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein files. President Trump has repeatedly lashed out at his base over the matter and their demands for transparency. Late last week, his administration asked a federal judge to unseal Epstein grand jury transcripts, although experts say those would contain only a small fraction of the massive materials investigators collected in their probe. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
The beverage maker Coca-Cola has confirmed it'll soon offer a Coke product with cane sugar in the United States. That's a change from corn syrup. NPR's Yuki Noguchi reports the company and President Trump are taking credit for the change that's slated for this fall.
Coca-Cola acknowledged the planned switch after President Trump got in front of the announcement last week. The company touted the change as a win for the president's Make America Healthy Again movement, which is pushing for more natural food products. Corn syrup is a far cheaper sweetener compared to cane sugar, but experts argue that changing the recipe will not change the overall nutritional value of drinks or snacks, nor will it move the needle on public health. Sugary processed foods are considered a big driver of a worldwide increase in obesity. Yuki Noguchi, NPR News.
Russia and Ukraine are expected to hold another round of peace talks. President Trump has been urging the warring rivals to reach a ceasefire and has been critical in recent weeks of Russia's failure to commit to an agreement. The peace talks could happen as soon as tomorrow in Turkey. We have more from NPR's Charles Maines.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced the new date for peace talks, saying Kyiv's priorities remain the return of prisoners and Ukrainian children abducted by Russia, as well as a possible meeting between Zelensky and Kremlin leader Vladimir Putin aimed at ending the war. The return to negotiations comes as President Trump has threatened additional economic penalties on Russia if Moscow doesn't agree to a ceasefire by early September. Yet the Kremlin insists Russia wants peace only once its objectives in Ukraine are reached, and Putin's spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, says Russia and Ukraine remain diametrically opposed in their proposals to negotiate an end to the war. Charles Maines, NPR News, Moscow.
From Washington, this is NPR News. NPR's chief news executive has announced that she would step down later this year, citing the burden of holding two top executive jobs at the same time. This coming just days after Republicans in Congress voted to wipe out all future federal funding for public media. NPR's David Folkenflik reports Edith Chapin has also been serving as NPR's chief content officer.
Edith Chapin joined NPR's international editor in 2012 from CNN and held a series of senior newsroom roles since. She says the decision to leave was hers alone, saying she needed to recharge and regroup. Among her initiatives was the creation of 7 regional newsrooms in which NPR fosters deepened collaboration among local stations. Amid allegations of liberal bias, Chapin last year created a team of senior editors to review stories for fairness and have visibility on the fairness of the network's overall coverage. Chapin says NPR must always be open to criticism and to keep considering all things, even if not everyone likes it. David Folkenflik, NPR News.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he's calling on the Federal Reserve to conduct an internal investigation into major renovations at its D.C. headquarters. Meanwhile, the Fed chair is the target of more attacks from President Trump today. Angry the Fed has not yet lowered interest rates, Trump has been pressuring Jerome Powell to leave. Powell, who was nominated by President Trump in 2017, is slated to leave his post in May when his term expires. U.S. stocks are mixed this hour with the Dow up 50 points. You're listening to NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Pathway Lending, Tennessee's largest non-depository community development financial institution, generating more than $1 million in economic impact through small business, affordable housing, and climate-related lending over 25 years.
Congress just voted to rescind funding for public broadcasting. That will result in a $400,000 shortfall in WPLN's budget this year. Every day, we here at This is Nashville bring you the voices and stories of Middle Tennessee. We share the stories that matter to you. We amplify the voices of your community. And we need your support to keep doing all of that and more. Give now at WPLN.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. For 3 decades or so, summertime in Nashville meant a visit to the one-of-a-kind theme park set to music, Opryland. It's a place we love to miss and one whose story continues to reveal itself nearly 30 years after its closure. This hour, we're going to meet some of the people who made Opryland a singular attraction and chronicle the legacy of a theme park that set the aesthetic for Nashville's booming tourism industry. And we're going to start today's show by hopping aboard Beatrice. It was a locomotive, custom-made for the park, I believe, that ran along the Dixie line that encircled the rides and the stages. Yeah, there it is. Bring it in. So up here on the train with me is historian David Ewing. We're on this train. We're circling the park. What are we looking at as we're locomoting here?
We're getting a good view of the entire park on ground level. You get to see Duwa City. You get to see the Grizzly River Rampage. Get the Wabash Cannonball.
Oh, yeah.
The skyline, everything that, kind of made Opryland fun. New Orleans area with some singing and some good food.
I see it. I smell it, too. All right, we've also got filmmaker Brandon Vestal aboard this virtual train. What's going on in this park that we might not be seeing or hearing, but behind the scenes? Who's working?
Well, definitely behind the scenes, we've got the dressers who are doing the costume changes for our showmen who sometimes have 12 different costumes in one show. They're about to perform, a series of 4-hour-long shows in one day in 100-degree heat. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
I love it. All right, well, let me give a proper introduction to my guests here as we step off the train, Liv. Thank you for that. So David Ewing is a historian who we could have on a show probably every week here, a collector of Nashville memorabilia, owner of the Nashville I Wish I Knew Instagram account. Thank you.
It's great to be back here, Blake, and I was the first guest on This is Nashville back in the day.
Oh, my goodness. I'm not sure I knew that bit of lore. But Brandon Vestal's a filmmaker. He's been working on a documentary about Opryland for the last 5 years or so, and it was just announced, I think, in the last week or so that A Circle Broken, as it's titled, will premiere at the Nashville Film Festival this year. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so when you started that project that we're going to talk a lot about here, you said it was going to be a love letter to Opryland, but I'll tell you, A Circle Broken, the title sounds a little more like a breakup note. What happened along the way?
Yeah, I mean, it started out as a love letter, wanting to relive my childhood.
Because you grew up here in town.
That's right. Grew up in Franklin and grew up going to the park every summer, like so many Nashvillians. And then in the course of the interview, you just have to follow the story. And the story turned out to be less about rides, more about America's show park. And it turned out to be about addressing the elephant in the room, which is what the heck happened to our theme park? Why was it replaced with the mall?
Well, what's the short story on what happened?
Well, without giving too much away, I would I would say it's an age-old story about selling the family farm.
Mm.
You know, you don't know what you have when you inherit it, and and you make a decision based on money. I mean, the company also went public. There's a lot of players involved. There's a lot of theories, but they all culminate together in that.
Great. Well, this is not a show about kind of litigating the closure of the park, so we'll leave it at that for now. But one of the claims you make in the documentary, which, for the record, I have not seen. In fact, I don't think it's fully completed because it's never done until it has to be done, right? In fact, we may be getting footage from this very interview that ends up in the documentary. I don't know. So, but you make this claim, I believe, that Opryland actually saved the Grand Ole Opry, which turns 100 years old this year. This is a story that I've not really heard. Is it true?
Well, yeah, I could comfortably argue that claim. I mean, it's also a sexy claim, right? It's a great tagline. I think it's a bit of a stretch to say that it saved the Opry, as David and I were discussing in the hallway right before now.
Yeah. Well, but what did it do to complement the Grand Ole Opry, which I believe at the time when the park opened, this would have been just as it moved out of the Ryman from downtown Nashville out to this sort of suburban center right there by the Opryland Hotel, this big many thousand seat theater. How did it complement the Opry?
Well, the story I got from Bud Wendell, who's sort of like the father of Nashville, was that Irving Wall had visited the Astrodome. And
is Irving Wall from Gaylord, the company?
Yeah, Irving Wall was the CEO of WSM.
WSM.
Yeah.
And he visited Astroworld and Astrodome, which had a theme park, Astroworld.
I see.
And so it was the idea that Disney has its castle. Mm-hmm. The Grand Ole Opry is a castle of a larger property.
Wow. Well, David Ewing, Opryland was all about nostalgia, and now it's interesting because remembering Opryland seems to be its own bit of nostalgia. You came with a hat here. Brandon handed me a mug that's got the famous map graphic of Opryland. Why is it that Opryland still pricks something with people's imaginations?
Yeah, let's go back to the opening in the idea of Opryland came in 1969.
Yeah.
The city had just gone through metro government. It was the space age, modern and new was in, old was out. And the Grand Ole Opry had a very good year in 1969.
Is that right?
The three new members of the Grand Ole Opry were George Jones, Tammy Wynette, and this girl from East Tennessee named Dolly Parton.
Oh, my goodness. I hadn't thought about that coinciding with this time you're planning the park.
And so the idea of a theme park was really based on National Life and WSM wanting a new home for the Opry, getting out of the old unair-conditioned Ryman in downtown Nashville, which was becoming kind of a mess.
And a bit of that history, the National Life piece, WSM was created essentially to market National Life insurance.
Insurance,
right?
yes. Okay. The radio station came first and then the Grand Ole Opry. Right. So National Life was looking for many, many years to have a brand new home of the Grand Ole Opry. And so when they hired some consultants, the consultants said, hey, have you thought about doing an amusement park? Because these consultants had just helped Walt Disney with Disneyland.
I see.
And they hadn't really thought of that, but they bought 380 acres of land on Pennington Bend. And they knew that they wanted the new Opry House, but they kind of got talked into, well, we're promoting country music.
Wow.
And they bet on Nashville. Irving Wall, Bud Wendell, they decided that they were going to basically say that Nashville's arc is going to be big in the 70s. and that we're going to bring tourists here. We're going to ride this on country music. And Opryland, which was not just like Disney because it was more music than entertainment, and they said it was going to be more entertainment than amusement. But it would highlight what they called America's music, which was country, folk, blues, jazz. That's why we had the New Orleans era.
Yeah.
So in 1972, so they break ground in 1970. Mayor Beverly Briley, they literally breaking ground. They have a team of mules and a plow.
Just for show?
That's how, just for show.
Wow.
It's old farmland, and that's how they broke ground. And the park opened up on Memorial Day 1972 to lots of fanfare and lots of excitement.
Yeah. If you're just tuning in, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're talking all about Opryland's lasting legacy today. We're also streaming on YouTube. If you prefer to switch over and watch, it's at the Nashville Public Radio YouTube page. It's youtube.com/WPLN. All right, so so it was more about shows than maybe rides. But Brandon, what did happen to those rides that were Opryland? I hear that they're like around and that people can still ride the Tin Lizzies somewhere.
Yeah, several of the rides were relocated. The majority of them were scrapped, though.
Yeah,
they were taken to Indianapolis, isn't that right? And Six Flags was planning on doing something with them, but they just sat in a field for 5 years.
Like a amusement park graveyard.
Wow.
Waiting for someone to buy them or adopt them, but a lot of it just they just rusted.
Well, David, how did the development there of this park proceed after 72? Was it welcomed with open arms and high attendance?
It was. And in fact, Bud Wendell said that he predicted kind of it would help bring more people to the Grand Ole Opry, too.
Yeah.
That they were shooting for this million number. But if you gave people fun, and older Nashvillians remember, today we have the Zoo and the Country Music Hall of Fame and the Frisch Center and all these other big attractions. But back then we had the Hermitage and the Parthenon and Fort Nashville and a few other little things. The WSM and the Grand Ole Opry and Opryland brought a majority of the tourists into Nashville.
Yeah.
And so when the park opened, Nashvillians showed up, people from all over the country showed up because we are a driving distance to half of the country's population. So bus tours, church groups, all sorts of tourists. This created the modern tourist industry in Nashville.
And yet kind of missed the boom times, really, of the last few decades. And we'll get to that in a moment. But Brandon, so it wasn't the rides that made the park this singular attraction. It really was all the shows, and I guess that's kind of what you found through your reporting for your documentary. And I'll say, like, as a kid, I don't remember ever wanting to wait around to go to the shows. I'm like, let's go get in line for the Screamin' Delta Demon. Same as you, I'm guessing. But what did you learn about live entertainment that maybe you didn't appreciate as a 12-year-old?
Well, they had the management at the time had good relations with Disney. And I thought it was really interesting that, Disney would send their people up to Opryland to see what they were doing. And the consensus was, well, we're not going to be able to recreate what you guys are doing here in Nashville because of the talent pool. One really interesting thing they did was a national tour to find talent. And Bob Whitaker described it as American Idol before American Idol.
Yeah, we have Bob Whitaker on the show coming up, and we'll hear directly from him. But yeah, it sounds like they really pulled talent from all over the country, which is kind of amazing considering this was kind of a startup.
Yeah, and that talent went on to Broadway, Hollywood. There's a lot of. Kristen Chenoweth got her start at Opryland.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Like just working a show during the summer.
A show called Way Out West.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, so many people have made that path. I wondered, David. I was looking back because I was thinking I even remember growing up having like season passes, which would not have necessarily been something my parents would have splurged for. But then I looked, and like in 1990, I think a season pass was like $35.
No, I remember buying a season pass in high school for $25, and that let you in as much as you want, and the parking pass was only $5.
Yeah.
And so back in the day, people literally, Opryland was Nashville's babysitter. People just left their kids at the park and then picked them up at the end, and it was fun, and it was good fun, and it was uniquely Nashville.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I don't think that's how we treat theme parks these days. I'm sure the price point beyond inflation would be somewhere much higher. But it made me think: was this also kind of a park for locals more than a lot of theme parks are?
It was definitely a park for locals, for people working. So many people's first jobs were in Opryland. But a lot of my friends, back then, Nashville was different in the 70s and 80s. We didn't have a lot of stuff to do, and Opryland was our entertainment.
Yeah. Well, you talk about 1 million people a year visiting Opryland. They did hit that and surpass it by quite a bit, I think, at some point, right? So, it was really our big tourist attraction, but it missed, the big tourism boom of the last, decade, 2 decades. Do you see influence, though, of Opryland in today's attractions or just the way the city presents itself to out-of-towners?
I think Opryland taught us that we could be a world-class tourism city. And it also taught us kind of Southern manners and training, the people that work there, that you smiled, that you presented yourself nicely.
Didn't you say there was an Opryland wave or something?
Yes, when the train went by, you were supposed to stop what you were doing, turn, smile, and wave toward the people on the train.
Wow. Well, so you're saying it almost taught everyone here that, well, we act a certain way for tourists because they want to have an experience when they're in Nashville. And
we liked them. And Opryland was just... There's nobody that had a bad experience in Opryland. It was just always fun.
Yeah. Brandon, I'm wondering, obviously the documentary you've been working on for so long has nothing to do with Dollywood, I don't think. But I remember when I was little thinking, there's this little park in East Tennessee called Dollywood. And now, I think I looked and it's like last year there were more than 4 million visitors or something like that. Is there anything the success of Dollywood tells us about how well Opryland would have done if it had remained open?
Oh, absolutely. And I heard that Dollywood, the year after Opryland closed, the visitor count increased 600,000.
Yeah.
So
it was pulling the same
demand
crowd.
was there.
Yeah.
You know, and the park never lost money.
Well, what do you hope that people get out of seeing this story of Opryland through your documentary and kind of maybe a new way than they've thought of it before?
Well, so I've always thought of this project as a big family reunion, something we could all watch together and celebrate our childhood or our memories of old Nashville. But as the story progressed, I've realized that this is also Nashville's trauma. And so part of this project, while it's a celebration, really does need to address the elephant in the room. And maybe we can have some catharsis about what happened to this place. And if we celebrate it together and then go through that process together, I'm hoping we can let it go here 25 plus years later.
Well, don't let it go. This is the best traffic that David Ewing gets on his Instagram account
Absolutely.
for Opryland.
The Nashville I Wish I Knew, anything Opryland people love. But the sad thing about the trauma related to it, it closed and we didn't get to say goodbye to Opryland. They announced it was going to be closed after the season was over and then everything was just sold. It's not like they told you, this is the last year of Opryland, enjoy all the rides and everything one more time. We never got that opportunity.
Well, that might explain something. Brandon Vestal's documentary is called A Circle Broken. It premieres at the Nashville Film Festival in September. David Ewing's a historian and the man behind the Nashville I Wish I Knew Instagram account. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you.
All right, so coming up, we will dig into the live show history of Opryland, including a chat with the man we just mentioned who oversaw entertainment, and also hear from some of the performers who got their start singing and dancing on Opryland's many stages. Stay with us.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee, serving the young and young at heart right here in Tennessee for 80 years. Blue Cross Blue Shield of Tennessee. Learn more at bcbst.com. And Amazon, proud sponsor of WPLN's Daily Show, This is Nashville. Engaging our differences so we can discover our unity. More on Amazon's community work at aboutamazon.com. And Zeitlin Sotheby's International Realty Global Advisors Melanie Baker, Shauna Brooks, Nathan Matwijik, and Stephanie Kleiner, representing distinctive properties across Middle Tennessee. Listings available at Zeitlin.com.
Hi, I'm Mariana Bacallao, Power and Equity Reporter at WPLN. Congress just voted to rescind funding for public broadcasting. That will result in a $400,000 shortfall in WPLN's budget this year. Every day, we bring you local reporting from local voices. We cover stories that matter to you. We amplify the voices of your community. And we need your support to keep doing all of that and more. Give now at WPLN.org.
And I'll tack on top of that, Mariana, before we hop back to the show, I have to remind you that the future is unknown here in public radio. You've surely heard that Congress and the Trump administration have clawed back $1 billion promised to public media. Very real effects here at WPLN. In the near term, it means $400,000 wiped from our budget. There is more uncertainty than that ahead. But the one thing we do know is that we can count on our community here in Middle Tennessee. So we're asking you to carry more of the load. We're halfway through an emergency fund drive that ends at the end of the day tomorrow. We've already raised $192,000. Thank you so much. That's hundreds of folks donating for the first time, hundreds of folks stepping up their monthly contributions, and it's that kind of support that's going to carry us far into the future. But you need to act. Please do what you can and support our work, like This is Nashville, by giving at WPLN.org. or calling 615-760-2010. It means a lot, especially right now. But we're feeling the love, so thank you. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We're taking a virtual visit to Opryland, the one that's on a map on this mug that Brandon Vestal, filmmaker, left with me today as a gift. Beautiful thing. The park closed in 1997, but people still remember it so fondly as we've been listening. For some, it was the rides, but it was the shows that made this theme park so distinctive. It was a musical park. That was the whole idea. It was meant to complement the Grand Ole Opry, which had just built the big Opry house next door to the park. It had original shows going every day. One of the first was I Hear America Singing. Let's take a listen to an early recording.
Singing the songs that for years have been bringing us closer together. We hear them wherever we go.
That was a clip from, like many clips of family footage from that's been posted on YouTube. So our next guests lived and breathed this show and many others. Bob Whitaker was the general manager of Opryland. Among many other titles along the way, his career spanned both the opening and the closing of the park. Bob Whitaker, thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Blake.
Yeah. And Jennifer Roberts, who spent many seasons on the stages of Opryland, 7, I believe, one of hundreds who started a career in show business by learning the ropes at Opryland. Welcome to This is Nashville.
Thank you, Blake.
Well, Bob, I've learned that Opryland shows really were special, even among other theme parks, including like the Disney parks, because it was all live, even the orchestration. Nothing was canned. Why was that important?
We just felt like that the history of Nashville and the Grand Ole Opry, we needed to present everything in its purest form. And the purest form is having live musicians sitting there with their instruments and having live singers on stage singing with their beautiful voices and not amplifying it in any way other than just enough to get it out into our audience. And live music, live entertainment was the theme for our park.
Well, that's kind of a personnel issue, though. I mean, how do you find so many people to be part of these shows?
Well, Brandon just mentioned that I had said that we had the original American Idol.
Right.
We wanted to find the very best talent that we could find to come in and present our material to our wonderful audience. So we would do an annual audition tour of anywhere from 32 to 36 cities, going from New York to Los Angeles and from Minnesota down to Florida. And we found the great talent all over this country.
Well, some of that talent, I guess, is Jennifer Roberts sitting here. How did you get cast?
Well, I love to tell the story that when I was 17-ish, we lived in Detroit and we had relatives in West Kentucky and Southern Illinois. So on one of our trips home, my dad really wanted us to experience the live music park. So we went to Opryland, and I remember standing in the line at the American Music Theater for an hour in the heat, looking forward to going into the air conditioning. And I remember they were bench seats, went in there, the curtain went up, the most amazing orchestra I heard right away. And then these amazing vocals, the amazing solos, and that brilliant choreography. And I knew at 17 that I wanted to work there. So fast forward, I moved to a school called Wayne State University. I had already been doing some summer stock, and I intensified my dance training, and I always had classical voice going on through that. And then I did a lot of stage productions. And one day I saw the audition brochure for Opryland on the wall at my school, and I said, I've got to go. So I raced my car from Wayne State over to, I think it was maybe Detroit Mercy, another college, and I ran in. And I think John Haywood said, we're closed for the day. It was like 3:02. And I said, oh, please, please, please let me sing. I've always wanted to work at Opryland. So they let me sing. I don't remember what I sang, but I believe that Lloyd Wells, the park musical director, had me sight read. And then I knew that Gene was going to have us dance. So I got to dance. And I remember, whatever you do, sell it, sell it, sell it, have joy. So I got the call that I was hired, and I was so thrilled. And I was put in that very show that I always wanted to be in, I Hear America Singing. So it was a thrill to go from the desire and hope to be in that show to actually be cast in that show my very first year.
Wow. Well, you put me in touch with Michael-Demby Cain, who spent several years at Opryland until, he was telling me that I think at some point the Whitakers said, sorry, you're not going to be at Opryland anymore because it's time for you to go to New York City. But let's hear this clip from Michael-Demby Cain.
I soaked up show business at Opryland. We did television shows. Obviously, we did live performances. We did industrials. We did everything that you need to know to be in a performer in show business. And so in every way, it taught me how to conduct myself on a television set. It taught me how to conduct myself, certainly, and do 4 shows a day, and what that took, the stamina it took to do that. And then that turned into 8 shows a week on a Broadway stage. And so when I got to New York, I was prepared.
Yeah, and Michael-Demby Cain, Bob Whitaker, he has some very kind words, as you probably know, for you and your wife Jean, who was the choreographer way back. But Michael-Demby Cain now has a dance competition, an educational organization. But Bob Whitaker, did you see these shows as the kind of training ground they ultimately became for folks like him?
Well, absolutely. You can't keep the kind of talent that we put under contract in a cage. People, producers from Nashville, from New York, from California would come to Nashville and look at our shows, and they would see bright spots in those shows, and they would say, how do we get in touch with these people? Can you help us make? Yes, we saw that was an opening door. And we believe that there was a time in every entertainer's development that we needed to push them. And when we couldn't push them any further, it was time for them to move on, not to get rid of them, but to make sure that they went on and took the next step in their career as an entertainer.
Well, it sounded like at some point you all realized how often this was happening and got to counting. How many people left Opryland for Broadway?
Well, at one time, I think we looked at playbills and saw that there was more than 50 alumni performing in New York on Broadway stages.
At a single time, you're saying?
At a single time.
Wow. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville. I'm your host, Blake Farmer. We're talking about Opryland's legacy today. If you prefer to watch the show, there's actually not a ton to watch right now. It's just me because our guests this segment are remote. But we're streaming on Nashville Public Radio's YouTube page. It's youtube.com/@WPLN. In a moment, we'll taking calls, hearing your Opryland memories. The number to join us on air is 615-760-2000. I'm here with Bob Whitaker, former GM of the park, and Jennifer Roberts, one of hundreds of performers who got their start in show business on the stages of Opryland. Jennifer Roberts, it's clear from the reunions that the bonds between these performers run way deeper than you might expect. What was it about the Opryland experience that created a pretty strong sense of community?
We just all went in there eager to please, eager to work. This is what a lot of us wanted to do for a living. And so we just connected. I was in a lot of different casts, so I got to bond with different groups. We all knew that the bar was very high. There was just a genuine love and respect for each other. And I just started going to the reunions two would have been like 6 years ago. And so I just felt like I was with friends and we had never been apart. It was just an instant reconnection, bond. Some of us were really good about staying in touch over the years, but most of us were there before, social media. It was hard because people moved a lot. It was hard to stay in contact. But we've rebonded so much through Facebook and Instagram, and the bond is strong. I think it's because everybody was there to work and everybody never really felt that it was work. We worked so hard. There was just a camaraderie
and it was
genuine love.
It was season by season, right? I mean, you're talking about running from kind of Memorial Day to Labor Day mostly.
When did Bob? Do you remember when the Red Cast actually started? Was it around Memorial Day?
Actually, it started in March, and the Blue Cast came on in Memorial Day.
That's what I thought.
And then we had a combination of the cast that would stay on through October.
I see. And those were just weekends, I guess, once you sort of got out of the summer.
Right.
Yeah.
Back into fall, spring. Yeah, but I will tell you one more thing. Michael and I were there at a time, and he mentioned the TV shows. We were there at a very special time where we got to do the industrials and we got to do those live TV tapings and multiple shows.
Industrials means what? What is that exactly?
What was the question?
Industrials? What does industrials mean?
Oh, we did a show. Well, Michael and I both worked on a show. It was an industrial. It was like a live commercial for Honda that we did in Reno, Nevada. So it was a huge cast, and they pulled some of the best production numbers and new ones. And we rehearsed long hours to put together this motivating, inspirational, longer show of the history of American music alongside the history of the Honda automobile.
Oh, interesting.
Or the history of automobiles. So we did a lot of those. That was the only one I did because I moved on the following year, but they did them a lot. We did convention shows. We got to work with Minnie Pearl and Roy Acuff and a lot of the celebrities when we were at the Opryland Hotel. We got to do cast albums. When I moved to country, so like Michael said, the background for us to be strong performers and professionals started in our early 20s.
Makes sense. Well, it wasn't just these big productions, Bob Whitaker. There was kind of music everywhere in the park. I mean, you might just have a bluegrass band that's playing to a few dozen people. Like it sounded like this.
When the work's all done and the sun's sinking low, put him a fiddle and a run and the bow, and the kids are all sing so keep it kind of low, they've got a proper bow.
All right, so you've got this music just in every corner of the park, but was it all country
you could
music?
hear that at the Hill Country Outdoor Theater.
Oh,
it was
okay.
a great little bluegrass spot, and we had those little sections all over the park, including Southern gospel, including rock and roll. It was just music everywhere. Any corner of the park, you could find someone entertaining.
Now, Southern gospel, I'm not saying I think people wouldn't be surprised to hear that, but you don't typically see that as a big commercial venture. How did that come about at Opryland?
Well, we had a Dixieland band in the New Orleans area, and it was themed, and it fit that the Dixieland band met the theming of New Orleans. However, we were finding after a couple of years that people would say, I love Dixieland music, and I love it for 10 minutes or 14 minutes. And then they would leave before the Dixieland band show was over. I knew that we were in the South. I knew that Southern gospel music was a very popular genre. So I went to the boss and said, I want to put a Southern gospel quartet together and put them in the New Orleans area. And he said, that doesn't fit. And I said, it's in the South. And I said, I promise you, if you will let me do that, let me change that out and put a Southern quartet together, I will record a cassette, and we'll sell enough cassettes to pay for the labor of the recording and also for the labor of the quartet all season long. He laughed and he said, if you can do that, I'll let you do it. So we did, and I was proved right. And then the next year I said, I'm going to change the New Orleans section back to Dixieland. And he used a 4-letter word and says, you are.
Oh, in other words, he said, no, we're sticking with gospel music. It's working too well. We're
staying right there. He said, do you know how much the pizza parlor increased their sales because of the Dixieland band staying there and people staying for the entire show? And I said, no. He said, we tripled their gross sales from last year to the year of the gospel quartet.
You knew the audience. Well, let me wrap with this, and we've got phone calls coming in that we're going to take in the next segment here, so please hang on the line. But I'm thinking live shows are just expensive. I mean, not to mention producing them, but just to have the staff that's going to do that all the time. If a park had continued to stay open, could you have kept up these fully live shows all over the place?
Absolutely. We wouldn't have changed it. Well, I shouldn't say that because I wasn't running the entire company, but I can tell you from the producer standpoint, live shows made us different from Disney, made us different from Six Flags Over Everywhere, from Kings Island, and all the other outdoor parks that was doing music. And it set us apart. It said, this is the show park in the world. And I believe we would have maintained it. And I think that the park would have continued to be successful right now. And that's another story.
It's another story indeed. So much emotion and nostalgia tied up in it all. Bob Whitaker, Jennifer Roberts, both appear in a new documentary about Opryland called A Circle Broken, premiering at the Nashville Film Festival in September. Thank you for joining us on This is Nashville.
Thank you, Blake.
Thank you, Blake.
You're welcome. Oh, well, you're welcome. Thank you. All right, so now it's your turn to talk. What are your favorite Opryland memories? Share with us on the air by calling 615-760-2000. Up next, we also got some characters who cut their teeth at Opryland. We'll hear their stories and yours. Stay with us through the break. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And Milam's Optical Service, celebrating over 100 years of providing fashion frames and prescription lenses from their in-town lab, and custom lenses for existing frames and vintage eyewear. Locations in Midtown and Green Hills. And Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, working to help donors make more possible through the power of community giving. More at cfmt.org. And One Community, presented by the Tennessee Titans Foundation, creating generational change one person, one family, one community at a time, by impacting lives in between Sundays. Learn more at TennesseeTitans.com/community.
Hi, I'm Paige Flager, criminal justice reporter for WPLN. Congress just passed the rescission that cuts funding for public broadcasting. For WPLN, that means a $400,000 shortfall this year. Your gift of any amount right now can help us bridge that gap. In order to keep everything you rely on from WPLN available to everyone, local reporting, deep investigations, and breaking stories, we need your help. Give now at WPLN.org.
And before we hop into your calls about Opryland, I do want to remind you that there is an urgent need. We've got an emergency fund drive going on right now through the end of the day tomorrow. So far we're beyond the halfway point. $400,000 is the goal. We're at $205,000. That is an incredible day and a half total. So you're doing it. It's never been more important though to support public radio. It's quick and easy to give. We've got a limited edition tote bag made for this moment. It says "Power to the Public, Radio for the People" with our logo. $10 a month will get you that one. Thank you for supporting us in these uncertain times. Give it WPLN.org. All right, back to the show. I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. So summertime in Nashville used to mean at least a trip or two to Opryland. It wasn't just for tourists, it was our park, and it's a place where memories were sights and sounds were seared into our brains. If you walk now between the Opry Mills Mall and the Opryland Hotel, which I didn't check that you still can, but I believe you can, and you listen close, you might still hear the Grizzly River Rampage. Do you hear that? Oh, yes. You know, it was a water ride with a dozen people on a circle raft splashing through this narrow canal. We're wrapping this hour on Opryland talking about your favorite memories and ours. You can call to join the conversation at 615-760-2000. Joining me in the studio to take your calls and to share their own memories, Lynn Wright and Sean Hughes, both who sweated through many summers working at Opryland. Thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
All right, Lynn, tell us what you got in your hand. I believe he's named Johnny Guitar.
I do. I was the first Johnny Guitar at Opryland, and I was there from 1972 to 75. We learned how to do it on our own, really.
Yeah.
I mean, but we were the babysitters of the people that left their kids.
Oh, so David was saying it was Nashville's babysitter, and you actually you felt that.
Yes, I did. And you have them grabbing you, turning you around, and all that, you know.
Well, for those who are not streaming on YouTube with us, it's a, I don't know, what is it, a 10-foot tall costume maybe made of foam?
I was a 10-foot guitar, and I think that's why they put me in this costume, because I'm only 5'5", and so they said, we need somebody short to get up in this costume, you know. And so I learned how to do that. And then later on, you know, we had all kind of history things happen. You know, I got married there.
Well, tell me about that. I mean, is this right? Maybe you were the first couple to get married at Opryland?
We were. That was set up by Joe Pakesy, our supervisor. And he said, if y'all are getting married, get married here and let us have the costume characters in your wedding.
How'd your wife feel about that?
Well, she didn't like it at first. Her mother loved it. And so it took her mother and I both to talk her into it. But we finally did. And at the wedding, you know, we could invite 100 guests. And their invitation was on Opryland stationery. And let's see, we had, I sang to her before she came across the bridge.
As Johnny Guitar, or
no,
did you as yourself?
No.
Okay.
And she said they wanted me to get married in my costume, and my wife said, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. So Emily wouldn't have any part of that. But,
Emily, your wife?
Yes.
Who's still your wife after what, 50-something?
It'll be 53 years in August, and it's Emily. Yes.
All right, well, it took. Sean Hughes, who's with us, is now a comedian, a family entertainer, known by many as Sean the Balloon Guy, but it all started at Opryland. What characters did you play?
Oh, gosh. My actual entertainment career started in, and I've got it up right here, because I had to go back and literally map everything out. It was 1994. Okay. I started working the park in 1985, but my actual entertainment career started in 94, where I did roving clowning.
Oh, so before that you were working there, but you were making funnel cakes or sweeping up popcorn or something?
No, I was a Big G. This is one thing that Lynn and I have in common. He was the original characters, the instrument characters.
Yeah.
Where I was shortly after Lynn's time that Big G took over General Mills, Big G cereals, and they were a sponsor of the kids area. And I was the other costume characters in high school, where I was, anything from Trix the Bunny Rabbit to Count Chocula, Honey Nut Cheerios Bee.
This helps because as I was preparing for this, I saw pictures of characters that I'm thinking, why are they at Opryland? It was because General Mills was sponsoring the characters being there.
Yes, they had sponsored the children's area, which was close to the American Music Theater.
I see. All right, so you stick with entertainment all these years later. How did it shape the work that you do now?
Oh, it massively shaped the work because Opryland was like an ultimate training ground.
I guess so.
I went from working at Opryland. Then for about 3 summers after that, I worked at a theme park in Utah because some of the Opryland staff went to this theme park in Utah. Then went on the road with Brooks and Dunn in 2001 as a part of the Neon Circus, which was a fantastic experience.
Oh.
And then doing all kinds of gigs since then, anything from Grand Ole Opry to Nashville Predators to Tennessee Titans.
Wow. Well, we're going to challenge ourselves here. Let's see how many memories we can get on the air in the next 8 minutes. All right, Michael, you're on the line, and you're on This is Nashville. Thanks for calling in. What's your memory?
Oh, you mean mine?
That's you. You're on.
Yeah, the ride operators. That was my big thing. Because when I got started, when I started out at the late age of 17, early 18,
yeah,
I was brought in on the Barnstormers, and that ride.
All right, the
there,
Barnstormer. That's the what? Like the biplanes that would go up. What? How high did those go up in the air? In my childhood mind, it's high.
I can't exactly remember what the exact total height was. I'm thinking somewhere between 75 and 100-foot tower, I think is what that was.
Yeah, any big incidents that come to mind there?
The only issues we had a lot of issues with the hydraulics. Sometimes they would go up halfway up and they would stick. They would get up there sometimes and they would be running and they would be sticking coming back down. And the weather would be another issue. If the wind got up, say 15 to 20 mile an hour, the entire ride was shut down because of the cabling that was on the actual carriages. It spun you around in the air, and lightning was the other issue.
Oh yeah,
it was literally a big lightning rod.
Well, you're getting nods here in the studio, recollections that ride was always having to shut down for wind or lightning or hydraulics or something else. Michael, thank you for adding to the conversation. We'll go to Meg in Brentwood. What are you remembering about Opryland today?
Opryland was the best training ground there was in America for singing and dancing and musical theater. There was never a point when the park was opening and doing live shows that there wasn't a former performer on Broadway. They were always able to go straight there. And you didn't just show up and do your show. You showed up and you warmed up your body and learned dance while you were doing that. And if you were a dancer, you still had to learn how to sing. And you were pushed and you were guided. You were appreciated. You were poor, but it was the best. And it was my bouncing board. I went from there. I saw a piece of paper in the green room after a show that for the first time ever, Tokyo Disneyland was coming to town for auditions. I ended up in Japan for 3 years. I worked on cruise ships. I'm almost 60, and I still sing, if anybody will hire me.
Wow.
But it was the absolute best. And I was out of the country singing when it was torn down. But through a drive through the country, I saw a lot of stuff in a man's yard. He was having a yard sale, and I was so grateful I was able to purchase the tall wooden cutout of the girl in Doo-Wah-Diddy City that shows you if you were tall enough for the ride or not. And she is in my living room.
Wow, you picked it up.
I did. I grabbed it. It was a fluke because they did sell a lot of things in a tent in the parking lot there when it closed. And I wasn't able to be there. So I was so glad to have a piece of the original.
Meg, that's great. Lynn, you're nodding along here with talking about the caliber of performers who were there at the shows. Do you have memories that those shows were kind of better than you might expect in a theme park?
Yeah, we love to go see I Hear America Singing.
Yeah.
And
they would update that show, right? It's not like it wasn't the same show from day one.
Yeah, and it was such a good history of music, like from the 20s to the 70s, 90s, whatever. And there were songs that went around everything happening in history, whether it was a depression or a war or whatever. It was all put together so well.
Well, Lynn, thank you. We'll take some more calls. Mark in Cookeville, you're on This is Nashville.
I actually got my start in 1985 at Opryland, and I auditioned in Birmingham, Alabama. Bob Whitaker pulled me aside at that audition and said, if you get another offer from somebody else, you need to call me.
Wow.
And so I called Opryland, and ended up getting hired in 1985 and worked there until 87. But I took a different path in my career and became a studio singer and also toured with different artists. I sang for artists like Martina McBride and Leanne Womack. I sang on albums for Garth Brooks to Alan Jackson, George Strait. So I took a different path with my career, and I really feel like I owe it all to Bob Whitaker for bringing me to Nashville.
Wow. Well, I'm glad he's listening to hear it, Mark. Thanks for sharing, Mark in Cookeville. And Lynn, you did studio work as well, right? Singing?
I have done singing, and
Yeah.
I got to sing backup for Dolly Parton.
Well, that's something to write home about.
It was the song "Whispering Hope" on her the American.
Oh, beautiful.
We're
going to take another call. Mike in Dixon, you're on. This is Nashville.
Subject. I feel like this is a subject you could literally go hours and hours on because it's such a hot button topic.
It's feeling that way.
It is.
We're out of time here, but I will tell you one of my favorite memories in life was me and a group of high school friends went to Opryland just randomly on a Saturday and found out they were having one of those Mayberry reunions. Yes. And I got to meet Barney and Ernest T. Bass and Otis Campbell and, all my heroes from that show. And that was one of my favorite memories. And this was pre-internet, so, I'm sure they had advertised it like in newspapers and stuff.
And that was literally the biggest attendance day. If they'd have planned right, they could have got Andy Griffith in, but they were like, we don't know if this is going to be big or not. And it was so huge, like restaurants ran out of food. It was just the biggest. I don't think they got more attendance in one day than that particular day.
Yeah.
You're saying, though, that it was like all the characters from Mayberry, except for Andy Griffith.
Yes. They could have gotten him, but they were like, we don't know how big this thing's going to be, and it would just exploded.
Mike,
Andy and Opie were the only two, I think, at the time that were not there that were still alive. I think Aunt B had passed, but Andy and Opie were there. But I will just say there are good people in the world because I showed up. I was so excited. The tickets were sold out, and the nicest lady handed me her ticket that her husband had decided not to come, and that was how I got to experience that day, and it was so wonderful.
Mike and Dixon, what a beautiful story. We're going to squeeze in one more call. Timothy in Hendersonville, you're on This is Nashville.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Our time is short, but what's your memory?
Well, I started working there from 1984 to 1991. I was a supervisor from 1988 until 91. And I was recruited over at Beach High School to come work in hospitality. I worked in the New Orleans area, in the Riverside area, as a sweeper. The day I turned 18, they put me right on the Carousel on the Lake, which was an antique carousel. Started working there, and then that fall I moved over to the Flume Zoom, where I met one of my closest friends till this day, 40 years later, Kurt Berger. And we've stayed in touch, but one of the funny things about that ride is because obviously the Flume Zoom was a waterlog ride, and underneath it, for whatever reason, that's where they did the Screaming Delta Demon. And whenever the rides start to overflow or back up, the water started coming down, but the Screaming Delta Demon could not have a drop of water ever on it. And every time it went off, we had to call the WIC girls over there and say, you got to shut your ride down. You're about ready to get flooded. And during the fall, we had so many leaves, they stopped cleaning them out. The ride would shut down, and we'd have to explain to people. But it was a great time there. And like I said, I run into people all the time that work there, and it's been great.
Timothy, great story. It's what we're going to end on. It's all the time we have. Thanks to Lynn Wright, Sean Hughes in the studio. Both were roaming characters and performers at Opryland for many years. And we'll have links on today's show post, including information on the documentary premiering at the Nashville Film Festival. And thanks to filmmaker Brandon Vestal for sharing his work with us this hour. If you want to listen back, search This Is Nashville wherever you get podcasts. You can also just ask a smart speaker to play the latest episode, or you can watch. The stream is archived at Nashville Public Radio's YouTube page. This Is Nashville is a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced by me, directed by Tasha A.F. Limley. Our board operators, Liv Lombardi. Answering the phones, it was Mary Mancini. Masterminds behind that theme music are L'Orange and Namir Blade. The conversation doesn't end. Find us on the socials at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.
Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners. And UT Swarps, for 50 years providing research, technology, and field-based programs aimed at improving public systems, strengthening communities, and supporting families. Details at sworps.org.